and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. My name is Tessa, this is Luna, and welcome to my first Q&A. I figured since there were a lot of new faces here, I would do a little Q&A so you would get to know me and the kitties a little bit better. So one of the first questions I got was asking to meet all of the cats and to talk about them. And so I'll introduce Luna. She is 10 years old. She's the oldest cat here. She is a purebred snowshoe. Two of my cats are purebred snowshoes, and she is just the sweetest cat ever. Sometimes she looks like she has a little bit of a grumpy face, but she's actually super sweet. She has a lot of white on her, which I really love, and she is amazing when we have guests over. She's always saying hi to them. She doesn't love being held the most, which is why she's not in a lot of my videos, but she just turned 10 on January 1st, and she's just a joy to have around. I absolutely love her. I love her blue eyes. I love her face. It's just so stinking cute. So that is my girl Luna, and I'll go ahead and get the next cat. This one is a bit of a more familiar face here on the channel, and this is Nutmeg. He is also a purebred snowshoe, just a little bit of different coloring. He is 3 years old. He turned 3 on November 1st, and he is obviously just the face of the channel. You can hear my other cat screaming in the background. We'll get to her next. But he is such a joy to have in my life. He's always out gardening with me. He's always watching and supervising when I'm with the houseplants in here. Yes, thank you. We'll get to you next. Yeah, your turn's next. But he is just great. I love him so much. He always is a bundle of energy, and he's always curious about everything going around, and that's just part of why I love him. And as he ages, he's actually gotten a lot sweeter as well, which I really appreciate. So that's my boy Nutmeg. Finally, we have the cat that was meowing around in the background. You would have seen a few months ago on my channel, I did her adoption story video, and that is my girl Saffron. She is about 8 months old now, I think. She is so cute. I absolutely love her. She is very sweet, very chatty. She always lets you know what she's thinking and how she's feeling. She is there when I wake up and when I go to bed, always just trying to get those last minute pets in. She is super playful, so much fun. Just as like a little recap, I got her from Tillery Street Plant Company in Austin, and she's just great. They have her sister, Spicy Mayo, there, who looks a bit like her, I think, and she's super cute as well. But Saffron is fitting in really well here. She gets along with the other cats very well. She's not a big fan of the dog, but they basically keep their distance from each other for the most part, so that's fine. She's the first non-snowshoe I've owned since I was a little girl, and I actually kind of love it. She just has really cute coloring. Yes, thank you. She's trying to play right now. I love the coloring. She's got like a cream tabby and a gray tabby on her. It's like a creamy orange, and then she has the white socks and the white chest, a little bit of white on her face, but she is just the absolute cutest, and surprisingly, she doesn't bother the plants at all either, so I think that is a big bonus. But that's my third and final cat, Saffron. In the next question I got, somebody asked what sort of mix I use for my houseplants, and when they're smaller, I do a sphagnum moss mix that has moss, perlite, leca, things like that. But as they get bigger, like this Hoya nicotine here, I do more of a chunky mix, and I do it when they get bigger because they can usually handle less water for longer. So I typically use orchid bark, perlite, charcoal, cocoa coir, things like that in the mix. Sometimes there's like the cocoa fiber chunks that I use, all to just make it a little bit more airy and light, but I do use the broken down cocoa coir because that holds onto moisture a little bit longer. So that's typically what I use. This Hoya has been in it for quite a while. It's been very happy. I did start this one out in the chunkier mix when it was smaller. Sometimes I do that. It's just kind of based on what I'm feeling at the time. I don't really have a rhyme or reason to it. I do tend to leave plants in moss for a long time just because I'm a bit of an underwaterer, but when they're bigger, when they're more mature, I definitely like using a chunky mix like this, and I think it is more cost effective than using moss for larger plants long term. Next question I got is actually a few questions, so I'm going to break them down a little bit. The first one was what started my plant obsession, and I would say moving into an apartment after college is what started my houseplant obsession. I was always into outdoor gardening, specifically vegetables, when I was a child. Ever since I was like 3 or 4 years old, my mom had a garden and I just loved it so much. And that's truly where my passion is outdoor gardening. But living in a dark apartment, nothing was green. I lived in a city in Maryland and I just kind of hated it. So I got my first houseplant at the end of 2019 just because I wanted something green in my life. I researched some plants that were good with cats, that were good with lower lighting, because I didn't know how the cats would react at the time. Luckily, they don't care about the plants at all and I can basically get whatever plants I want, but that's basically what started it. I kind of got hooked after that and was just buying plants left and right for a while before I realized I should just focus on plants that I really like. So that is what started the plant obsession. This person also asked if there was anything that I wish I knew back then that I know that now. And one of the things would be patience. Patience with getting the plants that you really want. Like I said, I would buy whatever plant I saw that I didn't have because I was just so excited about collecting houseplants at first, and that's great. And I still really get that joy of buying a new plant, but I get a lot more joy if I wait and I get the plant that I really, really want. Sometimes I wait for a long time even after the prices drop for a plant. And that's just because I'm waiting for the right one. And when I do finally get the right one, it is so much more rewarding than just buying whatever plant I see at whatever store. So that's kind of the advice I would give to myself if I could go back and do it all over again. Lastly, this questioner asked what would be the perfect starter plant in my opinion, and what is the most difficult plant in my collection. This is gonna kind of be a repeat. I'll start with the most difficult plant if you watched my last video about anthurium. But I would say it's probably this Anthurium Bessier, just because I have been a total failure at it so far. Definitely not the most difficult plant I've ever owned, because I have killed so many alocasia back in the day. But right now, this one is giving me a lot of trouble. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say this one. Though it is really pretty when a new leaf comes out, it's just very difficult for me. Though you guys gave me a lot of tips on the last video, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and repot this, get it into something new, and make sure I water it a bit better, give it some new fertilizer, maybe a little more than I thought I previously would. And we'll see if that helps. Maybe I'll give you guys an update if it does any better or a lot worse in a few months. So that's gonna be the most difficult. The perfect starter plant, in my opinion, is really big because I've had it a while. And that, oh my gosh, I can't even put the whole plant up here. Okay, that is going to be my Philodendron Heartleaf Brazil. This I got in Wisconsin on a road trip in 2021. And yeah, you can see why I think it's easy. I mean, the back is bare because it faces the wall, but this plant goes absolutely crazy. So definitely one of the best plants in my collection. It just does so well. I haven't repotted it since 2021. I make sure to give it fertilizer twice a year because I use a slow release 6-month fertilizer, and that's about it. It can tolerate underwatering. It only loses older leaves occasionally, puts out new growth points all the time, and it's really inspired me to try to get some other really nice big trailing plants. And I bought it as a 6-inch basket from Home Depot in Wisconsin, and it's just been loving life. So this is definitely the perfect starter plant in my opinion. Basically any heartleaf philodendron really, except for micans, because I find it to be a little bit more difficult, but any of these I would say is the perfect starter plant. The next question I got was, did I ever think about transferring my anthuriums to pon? And the answer to that is just gonna be a hard no. I do have a couple of Hoya that are in pon just because they came to me that way. But other than that, I don't mess with pon. I tried, and it just doesn't like me. Like, I don't know, I can't figure out that medium, which is weird because I feel like I do a lot of other no drainage or like reservoir mediums fine. But unless I already received the plant established in pon, I just can't get it right. So transferring anthuriums, which are picky as it is, into a medium I'm not exactly comfortable with seems a little scary to me, but I'm not gonna rule it out forever because I used to be afraid of fluval and now I'm doing pretty well with it. So maybe in the future, but right now that's gonna be a no. I also got another question of how did I get into gardening and houseplants? I kind of went over how I got into houseplants, but with gardening, I guess I'll go a little bit more in depth about that. I grew up with my mom having the most beautiful, magical garden where we lived in Pennsylvania growing up, and she still gardens to this day, and I absolutely love that she does that. And I find it very rewarding to have like a physical, tangible reward of whether it be the vegetables that I grow, vegetables and fruit, or even beautiful flowers. I am going to get a little bit more into flower gardening this year, but the vegetables especially, it's so rewarding when I can make a meal and almost every single ingredient came from my garden. I make my own spices, I dry out my own peppers, things like that. I made my own garlic powder for the first time last year. I've grown onions and garlic for the first time. In general, I just loved like, pulling a carrot out of the ground is just such a nice feeling, or harvesting pounds of tomatoes all at once. So for me, that's worth it. And like I said, just making a whole meal with it. I remember the first time I was ever able to make an entire salad out of things I grew out of my own garden was just one of the happiest like meals I've ever eaten, even though it was a very simple salad. It's just very rewarding to me, and that's why I do it. It's also really nice that Nutmeg enjoys sharing that with me. I know he's a cat and he doesn't see it the same way as that I do, but he has so much fun out in the garden. He's constantly watching me, chasing bugs and butterflies, and I love that he just like watches. I have this funny video of when I harvested kohlrabi last year, and I'm pulling it out of the ground and recording it for like a little reel for Instagram, and he like looks at the cauliflower and looks directly into the camera. I mean, it's like his mind is blown that I'm like pulling this thing out of the ground, and he just loves watching me do things like that. So that's another layer to it that makes it so rewarding for me. And I think I am always just gonna love gardening. I really want to have my own farm someday and be as sustainable as possible. So that's kind of how I got into it. Okay, finally, I have another set of multiple questions from someone, and I love these. So we're gonna go ahead and get into it. This one is, what do I do in my free time? Well, a lot of my free time is taken up by gardening and the houseplants here. I do spend a lot more time out in my garden than I do in here. Sometimes I find myself neglecting the houseplants a little bit more, but it's okay, I still love them. I also love to work out, specifically run. So I typically go to the gym every day just as like a benefit for me. I know some people see it as a chore. I personally really love it. I think there's no better feeling after you've done a long run and you just finish and you kind of get that runner's high. I recently started doing lifting last year. I also love to paint. I actually went to art school for a year, so I haven't done it probably in like 6 months, but if I have time, I love to do things like that. I love to travel, specifically road trips. I don't do as well with flying anymore, but I do love road trips. I did actually go to Hawaii last year for my honeymoon. Even though that was a flight, I actually did pretty well on that flight and it went very well. I am traveling a bit this year, so I love to do things like that. Just anything that can keep me active. We can't really do too much of it here, but I did really love hiking when I lived on the East Coast. So I like to do quite a few things in my spare time. Recently, my husband and I have gotten really into doing board games. I just think it's fun whenever you have company over. It's something to do where you can just put your phone down, you can turn the TV off, and you can play a board game. It gets slightly competitive, but you can just talk and laugh and have fun with your company. I also do really like to play Minecraft and Pokemon, so I do a lot of that in my free time as well. So that pretty much covers everything that I personally like to do. The next question that they asked was, what is my favorite part about where I live? And I currently live in Central Texas. And I would say my favorite part is the weather. I know it's a crummy day today. It's been raining and windy and like actually kind of crazy all day. I decided to film this video now because it stopped for a little bit, but it's supposed to pick up later. So really crazy right now. And it's crazy that I'm like saying this when we're having such terrible weather, but it is much warmer here than when I lived on the Northeast, the East Coast. So I love it. I'm a warm weather girly. I could live without winter for the rest of my life and I would be totally okay. So I really love the weather here. I'll say honorable mention, I also really like the food here. I love the food in Austin. There's great Japanese food, great barbecue, great Mexican or Tex-Mex. So I'm a bit of a foodie, so I really like being able to go and get really nice food in the Austin area. Finally, the last question would be, what is my favorite genus of houseplants? And I'm really torn about this because I mostly own Hoyas and I really love them, but they have been annoying me lately because they just like root mealies. It's just root mealies, so annoying. And I have a system now where I am getting rid of them. It's just that a few that I didn't treat before because they didn't have them now. So I have to go through and like do the whole treatment again. But I do really love Hoya, but I will say I actually really love philodendron as well. And they might actually be my favorite because for the most part, they are so easygoing, especially the heartleaf varieties. I've got my beautiful Rio and variegated heartleaf there. I have my Brazil that I showed you guys that is insane. I mean, that is the most full trailing plant I've ever seen in my life. And then I also have a beautiful silver stripe that I got from my friend in my first ever plant trade that is starting to trail, but the leaves are staying big. So fingers crossed that I can make that one a really full and happy trailing plant too. But yeah, I'm kind of torn. I also do really like Monstera. So I don't know. It's probably like Hoya, but philodendron is probably a pretty close runner-up as well. So that is it for my first Q&A. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and I hope you learned a little something about me and about the cats here. I am looking forward to maybe doing another one of these in the future, maybe when I hit 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers. That would be really cool. I just want to say thank you again for all of the new faces that are here. I really appreciate all of you, and it's so much fun actually doing this YouTube channel. I just kind of started on a whim after I moved here because I do live in a really rural area and it just gave me a little something extra to do. So it's been a really fun journey, just sort of learning all about YouTube and learning a lot from you guys as well. So I wanted to thank you all for that. But if you like this video, make sure to give Luna and I a thumbs up down below and subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here on the channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.